My name is Jane Caroline LeSueur Davis. There are a lot of Carolines in my family. To avoid confusing me with my mother, Caroline LeSueur, my daughter, Jane Caroline Davis White, my sister, Caroline Mary Turner LeSueur Mallory, or my infant niece who died shortly after her birth, Caroline Mary Mallory. You might want to call me by my maiden name, Jane Caroline LeSueur, or if you prefer, just my abbreviated married name, Jane Davis. I became somewhat of a nomad during my life. I was born on October 7th, 1842 in the St. Helier Parish on the beautiful Channel Island of Jersey. My island is geographically much closer to France than England and is currently supplied electricity by France. The French and the English have been fighting over my island for a long time. Jersey used to be a part of France, but it became part of England in 1066 when the French Duke of Normandy, William the Conqueror, invaded England and became the first Norman king of England. France tried unsuccessfully on 2 occasions to retake Jersey, but today both French and English are official languages in Jersey, and the 2 countries periodically just argue about fishing rights around the island. Today, tourists love to go to Jersey, but life was hard when I was raised there. My father, John LeSueur Jr., was born on Jersey in 1813. When he was a small boy, my grandfather LeSueur drowned at sea, creating the need for my father to be raised by a nearby farmer. My mother, Caroline LeSueur, was born on Jersey in 1814 and spoke English, but she was more fluent in French. She sang French lullabies to my siblings and me when we were little and continued to sing them to her grandchildren in later years. After leaving the farm and getting married, my father worked in a candle factory and delivered goods to various stores from the factory in the docks. Mother was an excellent manager, raised a good garden, and kept a small store in the front room of our home to sell the produce, in addition to household chores and caring for us children. Life was more uncertain then, and my parents lost 3 children way too young. 2 died in infancy, and my older brother, Jean-Philippe, died at age 5 before I was born. I grew up with 3 sisters and 2 younger brothers. The oldest, Mary Ann Julia, was 4 years older than me. Caroline Mary Turner was 4 years younger, and Harriet Ellen was nearly 8 years younger. My brother, John Taylor, was 10 years younger than me and was only 2 years old when we left Jersey to emigrate to America. Our baby brother, William Francis, was born in Bountiful, Utah the year after we arrived there. My father was tall and slender and was known to be strong, active, and a very fast worker. He loved to play with us children, and we adored his attention. He had a mind of his own, but he never crossed Mother, as she could be all business and had a bit of a temper. She was frugal and often insisted she butter our bread to avoid waste. My mother was devoutly religious and a great student of the Bible. Late in 1848, a missionary from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, William C. Dunbar, came to St. Helier to preach the gospel. My father was interested, but Mother lectured him on Mormonism's evils and forbade him to see them again. Father continued investigating, was convinced of the truthfulness of what he had heard, and wanted to be baptized. After a series of discussions and scriptural debates with Father, my mother's heart softened and they were both baptized in early 1849. I was about 6.5 years old then and had experienced a severe illness that caused me a great deal of pain throughout the year leading up to their baptism. Doctors treated me continuously for 2 or 3 years, but I received little relief until I, too, was baptized into the church in 1851 and received healing blessings from the elders and my father. Finally, I was free of the terrible headaches and ill health. For the next few years, we made preparations to emigrate to America to be with the main body of the church in Utah. In April 1855, we boarded a ship christened the Chimborazo to take us to America. After a difficult month at sea and with some sickness and death among the passengers, we arrived in Philadelphia and immediately boarded a train to Pittsburgh. From there, we traveled by steamboat on the Ohio River to its confluence with the Mississippi River and then upstream on the Mississippi to St. Louis, Missouri, where the Missouri River intersects, allowing us to continue on the Missouri River to get as far west as possible by steamboat. Starting in 1846 and continuing until the Transcontinental Railroad was completed in 1869, the church established a series of 12 departure points along the Missouri River for the saints to begin wagon journeys across the Great Plains. These departure sites changed periodically from year to year based on the local conditions at the departure area. That year, our westerly trek west was to begin at Mormon Grove near Atchison, Kansas. While traveling on the river to Atchison, the steamboat made a short stop, and Mother sent Father ashore to buy some soap. Mother began to worry that he would purchase the wrong kind of soap, so she also disembarked to find him. While they were gone, the steamer's crew prepared the steamboat to leave, and the 5 children were frantic for our parents to return. After searching several stores for the particular soap, our parents returned to the dock to see the steamer had left with us on board. My older sister Mary was 16 and I was 12. Neither of us relished caring for our younger 3 siblings, then ages 8, 5, and 2, on our own, and feared being left alone in the wild frontier of a strange new country. Worse yet, Mother had lost her purse in their haste, and they only had a few cents in their pocket to secure passage on the next steamboat. They finally persuaded a dubious steamboat captain to let them aboard until they overtook the slower boat to reunite with us. None of us thought getting the soap was worth it. We finally reached Mormon Grove to begin the long journey west. After walking and driving a wagon for over 3 months to complete the grueling 1,000-mile trek across the Great Plains, we finally arrived in Salt Lake City on October 28, 1855. We stayed in Salt Lake City for a month recovering and then settled in Bountiful, where I lived for the next 9 years, except for a year when we hastily moved to American Fork to avoid Johnston's army. After returning to Bountiful, we prospered, and my dad was able to pay off all of his debts. I met John Davis in Bountiful and married him on March 11, 1860. Unfortunately, 2 years later, my father died in November, leaving my mother widowed with 4 unmarried children. I knew I married the right man when John stepped in to help and support my mother and younger siblings for many years. In Bountiful, I gave birth to my first 2 children, John William and Jane Caroline Davis. In 1864, John and I decided we had more opportunities in Idaho. We moved to the Bear Lake Valley and were some of the first people to settle in Montpelier. My mother, grandmother, and 4 unmarried siblings joined us the following year. 11 of us, including Aunt Eliza LeGraley, lived in 2 one-room log structures on the banks of Montpelier Creek. We prospered in Montpelier for the next 13 years, were endowed and sealed in the endowment house in Salt Lake City in 1867, and John was proud to become a citizen of the United States 2 years later. In Idaho, we sorrowed at the tragic loss of our oldest boy, John William, from scarlet fever when he was only 5 1/2 years old. But we were also blessed with 5 more children: No Fear, Harriet Ann, Alma, Lucy Ellen, and Orson. We gave No Fear his rather unique name because as his delivery time neared, I was ill and asked our good bishop to give me a blessing to quiet my fears. As he concluded the blessing, the bishop counseled me, "Now, Sister Davis, have no fear." When the baby was born later that night, I felt we had no choice but to name him No Fear. By 1878, my sister Mary Mallory lived in Mesa, Arizona. After hearing reports of a better climate and more favorable conditions, we decided to move from Idaho to Mesa. Sadly, my sister died before we arrived in Arizona in 1879. In addition, we suffered a substantial financial loss from the sale of the herd of cattle we brought from Idaho, anticipating a more favorable market in Arizona, and my husband John suffered a severe sunstroke that never fully healed. We left Mesa in 1880 and headed to Albuquerque, New Mexico. Due to hostile Indian activity, making passage across the reservation was unsafe. We were forced to seek shelter in the little frontier town of St. John's, Arizona. The first Sunday in St. John's, a visiting general authority attended a state conference, called us to settle in St. John's, and we accepted without hesitation. For a time, life was difficult in St. John's with food scarcity, brackish water, and hostile conditions, but we persevered and built a life there. Our youngest child, Pearl Emma, was born the year after we arrived, and John found work by running a freighting business, working construction on the A&P Railroad, delivering mail, and running a halfway station for a time. Eventually, we acquired a good-sized farm in the area and called Little Egypt. We called Little Egypt and grew bountiful gardens and crops. Our children grew and married during some joyful years in St. John's. We also had cause to grieve as the dreaded scarlet fever took our youngest son, Orson, from us in 1893. He was only 16. 5 years later, my mother died at the age of 84. She is buried in the St. John's Cemetery. In 1904, after living 24 years in St. John's, John and I decided to leave with our two youngest unmarried daughters, Lucy and Pearl, and moved to Basalt, Idaho, where our son, No Fear, had opened a mercantile business. 5 years later, my beloved husband John died at the age of 72, and we buried him in Basalt. Soon after that, I moved to Blackfoot, where No Fear lived. As an aging widow, some of my most difficult trials were yet to come. In 1907, my oldest daughter, Jane White, died, leaving a family of 7 children from ages 2 to 22. In 1918, the great influenza epidemic took my baby girl, Pearl, who had 5 young children of her own under 12 years of age, including a newborn infant born just 4 days before Pearl died. The following year, my daughter Lucy married Pearl's widower, Oscar Ryder, and mothered her sister's young children. I lived with Lucy and Oscar for the remainder of my life and found great joy in my children and grandchildren. As I got older, I expressed to my family that I only had 2 wishes remaining. First, I desired to never go completely blind with my failing eyesight. Second, I wished not to experience a lingering death and be a burden to the family. As we all must die, I hope you can do it as I did. In December 1926, I was able to experience the usual holiday preparations and the joy of the season. 2 days before my 85th Christmas, I sat down and enjoyed a lovely dinner, then retired to my favorite rocking chair and quietly went to sleep for the last time in this mortal life.